Okay, everyone, thanks for joining. Sorry about that. We will move over and get you guys video here.
All right, can everyone see all right? We have too many participants. How's that? Everybody, can you see that now, Molly? Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, sorry about the technical issues, you guys. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Feel free to make a note in the chat if you guys can't hear or see. It looks like everybody should be able to hear now. So basically what we're gonna walk you through is we're gonna walk you through the Brazilian butt lift that we can do with alternative slimming and toning. So the way that you would approach this with a client, some clients might not need slimming and toning, whereas some clients it's going to be the most effective way of doing the butt lift. And so way to determine that is, as with any slimming, you do want to do the grip test. And so what we'll do is we're just going to grip this banded area underneath the butt cheek and just make sure that there's just enough subcutaneous fat there that we would be able to slim. And so for most people, they're gonna have more subcutaneous fat from the inner in towards the middle, less so out here because this tends to be more muscular in an area. So this is really where the toning would be more appropriate on the second session. So for the butt lift, we recommend starting with slimming. So we would do slimming week 1, toning week 2. Of course, because we're dealing with the same area, we don't want to slim and tone in the same day. It's going to be too much on the body. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start off on our model here with the slimming. And so you'll see the band right underneath the butt is really where we're going to be localized. And just so you guys know as well, we're going to be using the 3.0 to demonstrate this today. And the 3.0 actually has a personalized setting designed for the thighs. And so I'll show you guys how to go through that as well. If you are using the 2.0 at your studio, totally fine. Just use the body slimming setting, as it'll give you great results on that as well. So as with any slimming, you're just going to want to wipe down the area with a baby wipe to make sure we're working with a clean surface. It is possible that today the techniques we're going to roll out might look a little different to what you have been trained on. That's because we've actually leveled up with the French in the past week. We've met with them to kind of determine what the best technique is going to be moving forward for an American market. And insofar as that, we've developed this new technique for the butt lift that's going to vary slightly from the French technique. So if you were trained on something different, don't panic. This is just what we're rolling out as our new standard. So what we'll do, again, with any slimming, we're going to take a full pump of gel. We're going to get ourselves set up here on the machine. So on the 3.0, the settings are going to be divided up by gender. So we're going to select program. We're going to select woman, and we're going to go through and we're going to select thigh. So we're going to hit enter on that. It's going to show us a picture of the area we're going to be dealing with. Going to hit enter again. And when we're ready, we're going to go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do, actually, I'm just going to slightly. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and press play. Same as any slimming, you're going to deposit the gel and go use the wand to glide it over. So what we're doing here, again, as with any slimming, is you're just heating the area that you're looking to deal with the cold. And so you can see I'm really just focusing on the very localized area of the band underneath the butt. Following with my hand here, making sure that we're getting the most circulation. Your hand sort of is acting as almost like an oven mitt to extend the reach of the hot part of the wand. This can be a trickier area to deal with, so really important in this area in particular to really make sure that they have enough to slim. Otherwise, it's going to be very challenging for you, and you would probably be best off doing a toning on someone who has more just dense or hard muscle in the area and less subcutaneous fat. So we're going to go over both of those today. We have another model coming in who's going to show us the toning side of things. So we've got about 40 seconds left on our heat sequence. Also today in the webinar, we're going to be going over the 40-minute slimming session, when it's appropriate, who's a good candidate for that, as well as just some really important PSAs on using that setting. So we'll go over that in a little while once we're done with the cold portion of this slimming. And as with the last webinar, I'm super happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. So later on in the webinar, Molly can probably disseminate some of those to me that have been coming in the chat. So now we're switching over to cold. I'm going to take a full pump of gel and set this down right on her skin. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the technique. And so we can do one of two ways, and we can also combine the two. So here is really what's going to be most helpful for you in this inner thigh area, is to really do the same technique that you would do on someone's stomach. So it's very much this parallel motion. You're using your left hand kind of underneath the cheek of the butt, so right under that apple bottom, to really scoop and lift right in that localized area that you're looking for. So really use your hand as a barrier between their butt cheek and the top of the thigh so that you're really able to get some good tension there. We're going to always be checking on our temperature applicator as well, so really making sure that you're going slow enough, that you're getting enough tension in there, and that you're not coming up on the butt. So really important to note that when you're doing a slimming, you're not really coming up on the butt itself. We tend to not see some great results from that because it's a more muscular area and just more skin and cellulite. You're really focusing right on this area here.
Delaney?
Yes.
Good question. Should the client feel any burning sensation in either of those two settings?
No.
What's normal, what's not?
Yes, so absolutely no burning sensation should be normal. And really that's going to be mitigated by the gel. So if ever a client is feeling like any kind of sensation in that sense, it's probably due to a lack of gel, or insufficient gel, I should say. And so really in those situations, you want to make sure that they have a glistening amount of gel. Generally, we would have also have measured her beforehand, but in the interest of time and technical difficulties, we didn't. My biggest tip for measuring someone in this area or in the thigh area is to find a beauty mark or some other indicator, because especially on these areas on the legs, the measurement has to be so consistent.
Good point. As you're talking to a client, how do you direct them in what's normal to be feeling, what they should be feeling, and what would be out of normal?
Really, really good question. So in terms of what's normal to feel for a client, pressure, absolutely normal. Slight discomfort, especially on the abdomen area, because that area we're not really used to getting massaged. Also numbness, tingling, slight itching afterwards. I know for me personally, I just have a little bit more sensitive skin, particularly to the cold. So after a slimming, I'll find that the area feels tight and slightly itchy, but all of that is normal. The thing is we really want to avoid is having a raised irritation. And generally that'll happen when we're not using enough gel, and the friction of the wand in our hand pulling against their skin can cause a bit of an inflammatory response. So that's where really making sure that the gel is adequate on their skin and that they're being vocal if they're in pain is super essential for a client. And so you can see I'm really sticking to where her fat is localizing. And so she, again, really doesn't have any subcutaneous fat over to the outer edge of her thighs. It's really localized right in this area. And so I'm really going to stick here for the best results on this slimming session. And so because we're doing the legs, we're going to run the full slimming session on one leg and then run the full one on the next leg. So what I mean by that is that, as you know, all of the slimming sessions are going to be divided into 2 programs that you'll run. So on the 2.0, it would be 2 14-minute programs. On the 3.0, it's going to vary depending on the area. So we're going to run 1 full program right here on our left side, 1 full program on the right. The thigh session is 17 minutes per side, making it a 34-minute total treatment on the 3.0.
And on the 2.0, is that a 2-minute session and then 2-minute heat and then 12 minutes of cold?
Exactly. So on the 2.0, it would be 2 minutes of heat and then 12 minutes of cold, making it 14 minutes total on each side. On the 3.0, it's actually 2 minutes of heat, 13 minutes of cold, and then an additional 2 minutes of heat on each side, making it 17 minutes on each side.
Follow-up question to that. If they're using a 2.0, are they making up for that heat session by doing it manually with their hands?
Yes, so it is important to note on that note that on the 3.0, you still do need to include massage after the heat sequence. But yes, insofar as that the 2.0 is going to be fine because you're actually bringing heat in with your hands as well. On the 3.0, there's just an added heat component. So right now, temperature-wise, we're at -5 degrees Celsius, so doing really, really good on temperature. The way that I'm achieving that is that I'm really sticking to a localized area, and I'm going very, very slow, but never static. I'm also getting good tension there. She could probably do with some extra gel, so I'll quickly pump another full pump of gel, set it down, and continue. So another technique, so you see I've been really doing this up and down technique. Another technique, depending on how they're localizing their fat, is that you can come from the sides and bring to the center. So again, however you have to do to really get that tension is kind of up to you and really dependent on the client and how they localize their fat. And so if you do want to just pull from the sides and create the tension in the center, that's fine as well. For our model here, I think the parallel is going to be much more effective, so I'm going to probably stick to that.
Delaney, can you speak a little bit to the difference of the butt shape in the French technique versus the American butt that we're going for here and how we're achieving that?
Absolutely. So in the French technique, the reason that we've kind of diverted from it slightly and brought our own incorporation is that the French technique is really going for actually a lift and a small, like sort of reducing the size and appearance of the butt. Whereas the American way, we really, butts are definitely more in America than they are in France. So we're really trying to enhance the shape of that apple bottom, really creating that shelf and just enhancing the overall supple appearance of the butt. And so what we've done is we've actually taken some of the French technique, particularly on the toning side, but we've then incorporated our own apple bottom contour that's going to help to appeal more so to an American market.
So are the differences only for the toning or
Yes.
just for the, so
Yes.
the slimming
The
butt
slimming would
lift
be-
is the same, but it's the toning where there's a slight difference.
variation, exactly.
And if they have a client that is interested in the more European flat butt, is that okay to optimize or should they watch out?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so it just depends on what the client's looking for. I would say majority of the clients in the States are going to be looking for that real apple bottom effect. But if they do want that kind of tight, lifted more flat butt aesthetic than the European way I can show you guys as well. You would just, instead of splitting half and half, like we're gonna show you on the toning side, we would do just the full section with that lifting.
Another question on the temperature right at this moment.
So the temperature at this moment is negative 2.5. And just a reminder, anything below +4 is deemed effective. Ideally, we would want you to be anywhere between 2 and -4. If you tend to hover more in the +4 range, actually our last webinar, which is available to watch, was really helpful in tips and tools to how to cool that temperature down for you guys. And actually the temperature is cooling now to -4.5. Add some more gel to her hair. So whenever they become tacky to the touch, that's when you know that they need a little bit more gel. So they should always be easy to glide the wand on, glistening as opposed to sticky. So always remember that in terms of knowing when and where to apply the gel. You can also use your thumb on the side of their thigh to really give you good leverage and stability to be able to get the best tension there. If you guys are wondering in terms of hand placement, what's going to be the most effective.
So on this webinar, we do have the ability for you to unmute yourself and ask questions as well as into chat. So, feel free to use that option. Just remember to maybe, go on mute again after you've asked the question. You can also, of course, post it into the chat. Okay, looks like there still is a little bit of confusion around the French and American technique.
Yeah, definitely. So the technique is only going to be differentiated on the toning. So right now I'm showing you guys the slimming, very much the same as the French. But what we're going to do when we actually do the toning, the French toning I can even just show you now, is more exclusively this lifting effect, which gives the butt this sort of lifted, tightened, but also slightly flattened appearance. So really good for the French aesthetic. It's kind of that very weighty aesthetic. But for an American market, we really did want to adapt to that apple bottom aesthetic that's a bit more desired here in the States. And so instead of exclusively doing that lifting motion, we've added some contouring as well that helps to really shape and lift that apple bottom so as not to just flatten the butt as a whole.
Okay, missed a few questions here. I'm going to back it up and get a few of them. Okay. Question about why you're not using your hand to follow to help with the cold.
So that is only on toning. We're doing slimming at the moment. So no need to follow your hand with the cold on the slimming. That's actually only for the toning because that's the vasoconstriction effect that we're looking to achieve from a toning session. But you can see that right now because we did have the heat component as well, and we're addressing subcutaneous fat cells, you don't need to switch on that. So now we're going to switch over to the second heat portion. So on the 2.0, you wouldn't have the second heat. You would just go into a massage from the cold. On the 3.0, you're going to do the same technique of heat that you did on their front, or sorry, in the first part.
Still some questions on hypothermia potential with the skin and whether or not -6 is dangerous or not.
No, so we found that, so the machine actually caps off at -8. There's no risk for hypothermia. It's so localized, and also we're never keeping the wand still on the skin. So keeping the wand static is the only way that you would ever see any kind of damage on that. And that's also only if you were not using gel. So the gel really mitigates the effects of the cold so that the actual access to the skin is really buffered by the gel.
Another clarification on hot, cold, and then hot again, just 2.0 versus 3.0.
Absolutely. So for the 2.0, the slimming sessions are going to be contingent on 2 sequences when you're using the wand, followed by a massage. Whereas on the 3.0, the only difference is that instead of it just being heat, cold, and then massage, it's heat, cold, heat, and then massage. So there's just an added 2-minute heat sequence after the cold sequence on the 3.0.
Just a request for the reminders on what you're recommending to clients before the session, and we might as well go over the after the session as well.
So before the session, we recommend in terms of what they're physically doing, we recommend that they don't do any rigorous exercise for at least a few hours before the session. Reason being, you want them to come to you with as even a body temperature as possible, because the effectiveness of something like a slimming is so contingent on cooling them down. And so you can see here, I'm actually in the massage portion. So just gently massaging from side to side, some tension there in the fingers. So I do this for about a minute, and then I'll do an upward circular motion for another 60 seconds. And so in terms of before care on the diet side, you really want to make sure they don't eat any sugars for at least 2 hours before the session. That includes natural sugars, carbohydrates, as well as any refined sugars. So any fruit is a no, alcohol, any carbs, and any natural sugars, even like stevia. Sometimes we get that question as well.
Question on whether it's recommended to use gloves or not for this treatment.
So we recommend against it, of course, if you have a client that is requesting gloves, there's no contraindication. The reason why I highly recommend against using gloves is that a lot of these are going to be contingent on you getting enough friction. So especially with the amount of gel that we're generally using, we run the risk of slipping and sliding, not really getting that good tension in with the wand. And particularly for something like a toning treatment, it actually really can deter the effectiveness of the sessions because it's so contingent on the body heat coming and warming that stroke back up. With the gloves, you actually lose the body heat that your fingers are naturally producing. And so you can see, even when I'm wiping the gel off of her, I'm always going in a lifting motion. So always wanting to enhance those results. Okay, perfect. So we're going to move over to the second side now. You know what, I'm actually going to have you flip over for this. So we're going to move ourselves around if you want to flip over.
Everyone?
You can fall asleep. Yeah, if we can put your head on this side, I'm going to get started.
Great. Okay, we've got a couple questions here. Is the gel latex free?
It is, yeah. So all of the ingredients are actually listed on the gel. There's only about 10. There are no active ingredients on in the gel itself. And again, if anyone has any concerns, they're all listed there. I'm just gonna have you extend your legs. So people often ask as well what the best way is to position clients for something like an inner thigh session.
We're just going to reposition. Just 1 second.
So people often ask me when I showed this session in particular, if I would want to have them lay like this to get their inner thighs. So the answer is no. Reason being is that when you're doing the inner thighs, you really want to have them flipped over on their back, and you really want to be able to get that nice leverage from the inside. However, when we're doing this band right here, that's the situation when I would have them laying on their stomach. You want to have them comfortably extending out their legs, so that's where a towel comes really nice and handy because you don't want them to feel too exposed. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to address right on this side here.
Okay, a couple questions on the heat and the massage. So somebody was told in the 3.0 training that the second heat setting replaced the need for massage. Simon did post some information on the latest research that we're seeing on massage helping, but maybe if you could speak to how massage still does help even with the temperature.
Yeah, so Simon did send out some of the newest research on this, and we found actually that massage is super essential for effective results on the slimming, regardless of whether or not there is a second heat sequence. The reason why is because that physical manipulation actually is breaking up the fat layers that we're working on. So it's also helping to really like speed up and enhance that process of apoptosis. So we would absolutely recommend that you still massage after every slimming, regardless of if you're using the 2 or the 3.
And any guidance on the pressure on the massage? And somebody noticed that even the parts that you aren't necessarily focusing on the slimming, you're massaging. So just a little bit more on that.
Absolutely. So in terms of pressure, it's going to be the same kind of pressure that you would do to give just like a light massage. So this kind of pressure, if you can see a little bit. So you are using a bit of pressure in the finger pads. It's definitely not just like sort of a tickle massage. It is a little bit more in depth, but you definitely don't want to go too deep by that same token. You don't want to produce a more intensive inflammation response. It's more so just to break down that area. And the reason why I massage it all over is more so just for the comfort of the client. They've just had kind of an uncomfortable session. You know, you want to make sure that you're getting the circulation back to the whole area. So I like to, especially if I'm doing it on the back, I'll do a little bit on the sort of lower back as well, even though we don't address that. It's just nice to the client.
And how long is that massage?
So generally we recommend just 2 minutes. And I pretty much do it pretty formulaically. So I'll do 1 minute side to side and then 1 minute in these upward circular motions.
And again, you pointed out before that you're massaging up. In this case, the lymphatic drainage is up because the nearest lymphatic would be in the upper thighs, right? What about so this one that makes sense, on the stomach, would you be, is that one instance where you would be?
So that's something we're actually trying to gain a better understanding of. We will have a more official answer on this soon. The understanding of the massage and intention of lifting is always that it's lifting the skin up, so really enhancing that result. But we are looking into it, so we're consulting a physician to see if actually going in the direction of the lymphatic system as opposed to always up is going to be more.
On the stomach. On the legs, it works in both ways. You're lifting and it's the closest drainage.
Exactly.
Okay, a question here. Can you repeat about the inner side treatment on the inner thigh? If you would have a client on their side or on their stomach for the inner thigh?
I tend to recommend never having clients on their side because it tends to displace the fat in kind of a strange way and makes it harder to deal with. So I always recommend for the inner thighs to do on their back with their legs spread apart. So don't have them do like frog legs or anything because again, you really want to be able to grip from underneath and pull up like this is how you would do an inner thigh session. And so yeah, best for inner thighs is going to be on their back, legs spread.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a client that is asking to do her slimmings, her stomach slimming while standing because she's convinced she can grab more fat that way. Any thoughts on that?
I would absolutely not recommend that. That is it's actually a more common question than you would think. But you can let her know that doing the session standing up isn't going to give her necessarily more results standing up. But also generally when they lay down is when you can see how much subcutaneous fat they're actually dealing with. And so that's the situation in which, you know, I know a lot of people, because they're going to have some loose skin, some sagging, they'll want to do it standing up. I generally recommend laying down. It's just going to be easier for you and work with the client. It'll be very hard to do this when you can't move your body weight against them.
Question here from Roy. Based on the client's current BMI, about how many sessions would she need to get her desired results? So maybe answer that for the thighs and for the stomach, or, you know.
Yeah, so the thighs typically, because they're a denser area, you'll probably need slightly more time on those. So I would say really closer to those traditional 5, depending on the BMI. So if you are treating clients who are the larger BMI, of course the maximum being 35 that you can effectively treat. But if you do have clients that are in that 30 to 35 range, it probably will take them upwards of 5 to see their more desired results, just because you're dealing with more mass there. For someone smaller, 3 to 5 generally is going to be pretty good.
Again, the tension here looks very, very strong. You want to describe a little bit about the kind of pop the pimple technique that you use here as well?
Absolutely. So you can see that even when I'm coming from the sides, I'm really making sure that I'm creating good tension. And one thing that I've actually been noticing recently in some trainings is that people have kind of been coming over and kneading the hand. So actually you don't have to do that. Really think of it more as popping a pimple. So when you're popping a pimple, you don't come over the pimple area. You're squeezing from underneath and popping up. And so as soon as you get that tension, you can then double back. So you don't ever have to meet the wand to your fingers. That actually creates less tension. And generally, it actually can start to warm up the wand because it's touching your fingers and the body heat that comes with that. And also really important to make sure that you're really using equal pressure on your right and left hand. So the wand should have equal amount of pressure as your finger does digging into this. And I see a question here that I can actually answer right now about muscular thighs. So absolutely, if someone has muscular thighs with no pinchable fat, you're going to want to do toning, and it's going to give them the best results as opposed to slimming. Slimming just wouldn't be effective. And you guys are going to see in our next model where that's going to be the case, where toning is going to be much more effective for her. She is quite muscular. And then I do see a question here about menstrual cycle. So it's really up to the client on that. There's no real contraindication in terms of menstruation, but obviously it might be slightly more uncomfortable for the client, particularly in this area if they are on their period. So it might be best to wait in that case.
Okay, perfect. 2 other questions. Somebody stepped away on the pimple concept. If you could just repeat that, since
Absolutely.
that's pretty
So
core.
basically what we're doing here is have your hand be doing the same technique that a pimple popping would look like. And so you're scooping from underneath and lifting up. So you're making these hills of fat and then doubling back and then bringing a new hill. So it's that same idea of the tension that you would need to pop a pimple.
Perfect. And question here. CRYOX is having a hard time seeing good results with the toning and actual cellulite, visual reduction. Wondering if they should be seeing significant results and whether they should be seeing them right away.
Got it. Really good question. We've been having a lot of questions on this as of late. So in terms of the toning for cellulite, you won't see results right away that are as significant as something like a facial. The reason being is that skin on the body is so much thicker than the skin on the face. It also takes collagen and elastin about 3 to 4 days to produce in the body. And generally with anyone with cellulite, they are going to need to do those full 5 sessions to see a real significant change. They should see, again, like subtle changes at each checkpoint. So at each week, they should be seeing subtle changes, but it is not going to be a magic eraser in that respect. So really important that clients don't expect to step up off the table and see that their cellulite is disappearing. It is something that takes a little bit more time to produce in the body. Also, it does depend on if you guys are treating clients who have cellulite in fatty areas, in which case alternative slimming and toning is much more effective for that than toning on its own.
Question here. What is the ideal measurement of the area when doing a slimming session? Example, a larger person will need more focus on smaller areas versus someone with little fat, you may be able to cover more of the abdomen, correct?
Yes, so in terms of breaking up the areas depending on size, if someone is a woman and they're under 35 inches around the belly button, I generally recommend that you do front and then back sides as well. Generally, people under that measurement are going to localize most of their front fat on the lower abdomen, so it shouldn't need a lot of time. On the back, you're going to not need very much time on them either because if they do have love handles, they will be quite small. If they're over 35 inches, I recommend instead sticking exclusively to the front and creating your areas depending on how they localize their fat.
Okay, another question here. Is there a correlation in number of treatments and age given the same BMI?
No. Yeah, not really. So we would say in terms of cellulite, absolutely, because obviously in someone who's a little bit older, the breakdown of collagen and elastin in their body has already started at a more rapid pace than someone who's much younger. So in those situations, I would say in terms of the toning, so this isn't really going to be applicable to slimming, but in toning sessions, you can have someone who's older come in once every 3 to 4 days instead of that traditional once a week. And that will help their body to just kickstart that collagen and elastin production a little bit better.
Interesting. And then as far as slimming, we've generally seen that the diet before and after, as well as just kind of skin body temperature and diet and fitness regime is more indicative of the results instead of age. Is it concerning if someone who is fairly muscular does not see a decrease in waist circumference on a first slimming session?
No, so again, they really do have to have enough subcutaneous fat to be able to pinch. So depending on if they're actually dealing with loose skin, a toning might be more efficient for them and more effective. If you're trying to slim someone who's very muscular and it's actually loose skin that they're dealing with as opposed to subcutaneous fat, the results are not going to be what you're looking for. And then I got a question weighing your clients during the treatment process. So I don't recommend this, as none of the treatments are actually going to be changing their weight on the scale. It's more so measurement based. So their weight on the scale won't be changed by these sessions.
Sorry about being difficult to hear. The machine is doing its, fan cooling, as you guys know from the machine. So we'll speak up a little bit. Question here. They heard on the last webinar that slimming is not effective in 1 of 10 people. Are there any characteristics that may help us screen these people out before treatment? And is there a way to know after 1 session or 2, etc.?
So what I would say on that is generally that's going to be on the diet, lifestyle, as well as BMI scale. So as long as you're really knowing when someone is a good candidate, making sure that your clients know that this is not an alternative to diet and exercise, but instead a great tool to help support them in the areas that they can't lose with diet and exercise. Generally, it's going to be pretty easy to make sure that that doesn't happen. Although having said that, sometimes you will get clients who just are not going to be happy, in which case we absolutely want to do the best that we can to make sure that they are. And generally in that respect, it's going to be us making sure we know that we're sticking to a small enough area, that we know that we're measuring them, and from there determining what we're able to do for them.
Yeah, in observations and seeing some of these, a lot of times it's a mismatch between expectations and what they're getting. So making sure you're doing a consultation is always helpful. Not in unhappy customers, but in areas that we've seen people get sometimes the 1/2 inch versus 1 inch. Sometimes it's the more muscular men in the stomach area because the fat is beneath a layer of muscle. So we've had a few where they only lost 1/2 inch, but again, they were thrilled with the results because they were already very much in shape. So a 1/2 inch was a large piece there. But that can be one of the more challenging clients to get some of the piece off if the leftover fat is very much underneath muscle already.
Absolutely, yeah. And insofar as that as well, in terms of loss, it really does vary based on the client's body and how they metabolize the sessions. So definitely should not be discouraging if you have somebody come in and they lose a 1/2 inch, because that is generally just an indicator, again, that they are potentially more muscular and that they potentially just have less to lose, but it's just slightly more stubborn, so just might require a couple more sessions on that.
Simon's just asking an interesting question. Feel free to kind of ping it into the chat. If anybody's tried nutrition advice with a 5-pack to help people really stick to the diet part of it. He's saying from personal experience, it's pretty hard to stick to the diet. So, okay. Another question, can you follow up slimming with a toning immediately after slimming on the same area?
No, so we don't recommend this. The reason why is because it's just too much cold and it ends up just negating the effects of those sessions. So what I would recommend instead, generally if you're going to do slimming and toning on the same area, I would recommend doing them 1 week apart. So slimming today, she would come back next week for the toning, and then the week after that, it would have been 2 weeks since this slimming, so she could come back for the second slimming. So that's generally going to be the best way to go about it, because then you're going to get the optimal collagen and elastin production, the optimal time to re-up on the tightness. So that's what I would recommend in that case. Awesome, so we're done here. Just going to wipe off the excess gel again in a lifting and shaping motion. Great, awesome, thanks so much, Lev. And now we're going to show you guys the toning.
Good question we want to clarify.
Yes.
Hold on 1 second. I'm just going to stop the video for 1 second while we get another model. Okay, so we're going to get our next model in place to demonstrate the toning part of a butt lift. While we get prepared, we'll answer a few of these questions. So, Del Ray, what if we do half of the body part today and the other half a week or 2 later? The client should be able to compare one leg to the other, or else? Just a thought. So we always send out clients in equal parts. So we always do it on both sides. The reason is the risk is too high. If they leave and don't come back, you could be sending out a lopsided client, and this could eventually lead to issues. So we don't recommend doing that. We do recommend doing before and afters. Of course, after one leg, you know, if you do one leg, do it before and after, so you're capturing that difference. But we don't recommend doing one or the other just because you're relying too much on the client and that they ensure coming back in.
You want to make sure they're even.
Okay. Yeah, 10 packs, 2,500 is the general guidance. There's also, I think Brandon at Thrive has it a little higher, Simon a little higher. I mean, Simon, you're saying if they're buying a 10 pack, that's a good reason to go to 250. Again, depending on your market, if the price holds, you can make that, you know, a higher. Okay, we are going to start the video. One more question for you, Delaney. Are there immediate results after the butt lift? And I think you should answer that both for the slimming as well as for the toning.
Yes, so for the slimming, so actually for both, absolutely. For the slimming, it is going to be more of that, like, sort of circumference inch loss right underneath the butt. For the butt lift, you are going to see some change in the overall shape and lift. Again, it's not going to be instantaneous for something like cellulite, which takes a little bit more time, but you will see some subtle results. So just make sure that the client knows that the results initially are going to be subtle, but they'll see their best results at the end of the week after the session.
Great. Okay.
Perfect. So we're going to get started on the toning portion of the butt lift. And so for that, literally you can see with her here, there's no pinchable fat underneath her butt. So for her, we would just do the 5-pack of simply toning. So she's very muscular in this area, so it's very just tight skin. And so actually the lifting and toning is going to be really, really good. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off again, as with any session, you want to wipe them off. I always wipe off in a lifting motion. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out with the French technique, and then halfway through we switch to our apple bottom technique. So we're going to show you both techniques. If you do have a client that does want to sort of like mitigate and maybe flatten and lift their butt a little bit, then you can feel free to do exclusively the French version. But we recommend generally breaking it up in half. And again, this is a brand new technique. We just sort of came to this consensus last week. So if you have been trained on a different technique, just update your technique to match this one that we are showing you today. So for any toning session, you're going to want to apply the gel first and foremost. So I start about halfway up the thigh. I see the butt lift as being a separate toning from some, like what the backs of the thighs would be. Backs of the thighs, I tend to come up here. I still like to do a little contour on the backs of the thighs, but I don't really come over the butt itself. For doing the backs of the thighs for cellulite or any other issue, I like to keep it pretty much to here. Whereas if I'm doing the butt, I keep it pretty much to here, so cut off right here. That's because broad strokes are great, but we don't want them to be quite this long. We want to make sure we're really sticking to a localized area. So you want to make sure you've got enough gel on her, nice thick layer.
Delaney, 2 things just to clarify. We've been seeing some questions if it's normal for the technicians to be getting pruning in their hands.
Absolutely. So yeah, we see a lot of pruning because it's a water-based gel. So naturally, when you are dealing with water quite a bit and there is going to be a lot of gel on your hands, pruning's totally normal. Some things that can help that are if you're using, if you use a hand sanitizer in between sessions as opposed to doing a full wash of the hands, that actually is helpful because you're not adding more water to the mix. If you do feel that washing your hands is better, that's fine as well. It just kind of is a little bit of the nature of the gel. It's mostly water-based.
Perfect. And there was a question on the previous one about if a customer has the same amount of fat on the outer thighs as the inner thighs.
So if the client, so in that situation, you do just have to gauge it depending on the client's body in particular. And so what you would do in that sense is that if they did have more fat here as well, you would just do the 12 minutes and make sure that you're hitting all those areas. the model that we had in before, she was almost all muscle out here, as I would say most of your clients will be. And so if they are more so muscle out here, then when you do the toning, you'll see that's when we're gonna really address that area. Whereas this area is where she really was localizing her subcutaneous fat. So I wanted to make sure to stick to that, because we would get this area more in a toning issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So on the 3.0, you would go into programs, women, and then toning body, which is gonna be the last setting. You're gonna hit enter there. On the 3.0, it is a 30-minute session. You break it up into 15-minute halves. So we're gonna go ahead and press play, and we'll get started. And so for the French part of the technique, which we'll do the first half, what we do is we do a tap, tap, and then a lift up, and we follow with this hand. So tap, tap, lift up. And I get a lot of questions as to why the tap, tap. So the tap, tap is helping to promote intracellular communication. It's also helping to promote elasticity in the skin. So it's important that we remember to do that. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It's a pretty basic, kind of just looking to get a little jiggle in there. So the main component of the toning is that we're making sure that we're following with our hand after every stroke. In terms of pressure, I also get this question quite a bit. It's basically like you would do like a lifting massage. So if you're massaging your own face, think about it as, you know, something like a jade roller would do. It's kind of taking the skin and lifting it up. So more so pressure on the hand that follows to really enhance that lift.
There's lots of questions going on in the chat around packages. We are seeing more kind of advanced packages. One of the things we've seen with the 10 packs is, you know, really offering that with a consultation and kind of the elite body package. So you would be able to address multiple body parts with a 10 pack. You know, any kind of makeovers, brides, you know, generally people that really want to see a dramatic difference.
Awesome.
And where you're doing consultation, that can be great. As Simon says, you know, it's great to really just lock them in at that point. On the 5 packs and converting to the next one, there's good ideas that Simon has put in there. Again, usually if you're doing an intake form with areas that they've got concerns about, usually there's more than one body part. So you can either move on to the next body part, or you could do maintenance. So we do recommend as a kind of base level, unless you're in a very high-end market where you are up pricing for slimming, that you can make these things all interchangeable. So face, toning, slimming, and that way you can kind of interchange between them depending on what the client needs. So they're achieving great results. They've done 4 kind of combinations of slimming and toning around the belly, and then they've got a 5th one, and they've got a wedding, and you can, you know, easily make that a facial, you know, and switching back and forth between, you know, if they achieve the results that they want around the belly and want to move on to the legs, they can do that. So it adds, you know, that ability. But that said, we have seen a lot of great results, you know, with our top retailers charging even more for the slimming sessions. Okay, so question on the going up the butt versus contouring.
Exactly.
So this is really the difference between the French and the American. So go into it, Delaney.
Yep, so definitely, I knew we would get a lot of questions on this. Even in my previous trainings, I've trained exclusively on our American way, but we've actually done some testing, and we've found that a combination of the American and French way is actually the best in order to get really the best sort of butt lift results. And so when we're doing this, we're only going to be doing this lifting up the butt cheek itself for about another 4 minutes before we move into the exclusive contour. And so when I've done trainings before, I've basically done this upward motion, but just a little bit more adjusted. So we've done it on just the butt cheek, but actually we found that these broad strokes up actually help to enhance the overall lift and appearance of the butt, whereas then when we come into contour, the butt's already been lifted by these strokes. And so in our testing, again, we really just came to this consensus the past week for what's going to be best for an American market. And so what we're going to do is I'll show you in just about 3 minutes here is when we'll move into the contour. So definitely stay tuned for that.
So we do know that this is going over our 1 hour time frame. We will have this available on record and on video. And we also are going to be adding the chat so that you guys have access to that and the answers there as well. So we totally understand if you don't have the extra time and need to pop off, we will have this available. If you can stay, please do. We'll finish it up.
Yeah, especially if you guys can just stay for another 2.5 minutes until we get to the contouring part. From there, it's going to be the same. So once we go over contouring, we're well and good.
Okay, a couple questions. There's still a little confusion between the difference between toning and the other session you did on the thighs.
Got it. So the other session that I did on the thighs was a slimming session. So that one was using, again, heat, cold, and then heat again. So that's producing the thermal shock that's actually passing those fat cells out of the system. Whereas toning is more so about microcirculation, so it's about bringing more collagen and elastin to the skin. It's also just about increasing the overall tone of the skin, helping it to be more even, more lifted, more glowy, brings oxygenated blood, so it really helps with cell turnover in the outer layer of the skin, which leaves behind, again, a more fresh, tight, young-looking skin. So in about a minute here, we're going to switch it up to the butt contour, which is what we're going to do for the second half. So if you're working with the 2.0, you're going to do 5 minutes of this technique and then 5 minutes of the contour on each leg. So 10 minutes total on each leg. If you're working with the 3.0, it's instead of being 10 and 10, it's actually 15 and 15. So in that case, we do 7.5 of the lift and 7.5 of the contour. All right, so now we're going to move into the technique that's very specific to the butt lift. So what we're going to do, we're going to start right here, tap, tap. We're going to contour and lift the apple bottom. So you're going to tap, tap, contour, and lift up the apple bottom. And you're going to continue this for the remainder of the session. So contour, tap, tap, lift the apple bottom. Tap, tap, contour, lift the apple bottom. Just continue this way. So really coming into the crease. I'm going to add some more gel here as well to make sure we're gliding properly. But we're really looking to enhance that butt shelf, that apple bottom contour. Always make sure you're following through with your hand the whole way. Basically what this is going to do is this is the American side of things. So we're trying to really enhance.
Okay, so the clarification from Kara, so basically in sum, the first 5 minutes is French toning, the next 5 minutes is American toning.
On the 2.0, absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. Basically half and half.
Up over the butt for 5, which is more of the French way, up around, which is more of the apple bottom American. Asking again, just to remind on the time split for each on this technique.
Yeah, so the time split is going to be half and half. So you want to start with the French toning, so the up and over the butt. That you're going to do for half. On the 2.0, that's going to be 5 minutes. On the 3.0, that's going to be 7.5 minutes. And then you're going to finish with the apple bottom contour, which is what I'm doing right now. And that you're going to finish out the session with. So basically, after we've lifted up the butt, we want to make sure that we're enhancing the apple bottom shape as well.
Okay, one clarification, the question on toning and slimming is if there's an actual Brazilian butt lift setting, which the answer is no. We're just showing you how to use the wand and use these techniques to create that Brazilian butt lift. You won't find an actual setting in the software on it. We should have clarified that. That's actually a good question.
It's also essentially the reason why we wanted to show you both of these is that generally you would be doing both on the same client. Again, alternative weeks. So the Brazilian butt lift is a great opportunity to sell out a 10-pack because you would do 5 slimmings and 5 tonings on the area. So I know it's a little bit confusing because we use 2 models, and you know the reason being is obviously we couldn't do a slimming and a toning on the same area in the same day. But generally, this would be the same client coming back weeks apart. So you would do slimming week 1, toning week 2, slimming week 3, toning week 4. And after 10 sessions, we've seen some incredible butt lift results. I think there should be some photos. If not, we can definitely get them from France. But after 10 sessions, really amazing stuff on the butt. And then for people asking about instructions, and also if you missed earlier, this webinar is going to be posted to the same folder that the other webinars are located in. So if you do have any questions or you need to reference the video again, that's going to be a great resource that's going to be available to everyone as well. And yes, for the 2.0, it's 5 minutes of the French technique and then 5 minutes of the American apple bottom contour.
So good questions on slimming. Once the fat cells, it is permanent. So the fat cells are gone. The one thing is it is still important to follow diet. Obviously, the existing fat cells can expand again if they're eating McDonald's, right? So, but there will be fat cells removed from the system. So it is a permanent effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and the way that you can frame it too is that, you know, when you're born with a set number of fat cells. You never grow new fat cells over the course of your life, but you can expand the ones that you still have.
Question here. So for the full Brazilian butt lift treatment, it combines both treatments you showed on the previous model, slimming under the butt 1 week, and then 5-minute toning plus 5-minute contouring next week.
Yes. So we would recommend that you sort of like set this up as a 10-pack. So you would do 5 slimming, 5 toning, all on this area using the techniques that we showed today.
Question on the removal of the fat cells, where they go, just as a reminder on apoptosis.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially when we were doing the slimming, what happens is that we are using a three-phase thermal shock to eliminate the fat cells through the lymphatic system through a process called apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. And so essentially they pass themselves out of your body naturally through your urine, your sweat, and your breath. And again, that's why it's so important that the client is drinking enough water. Again, just a reminder, at least 1.5 liters a day for the 14 days after they've done a slimming session. So Kara just asked a good question. If the client wants to improve the look on the back of their legs, what you would do is you would stick to this area. Yeah, so back of the legs, you can stick here. When I do the backs of the legs, I still like to kind of contour up, but it's more so focused on this area here, not on the butt. All right, perfect. And so this side is done. As with any session, I do like to do a little upward massage on the toning, just to really push the skin up in the direction I'm looking for. So I do come up under the butt to contour, smooth up and over. And then once I'm done with that, just really light, basic massage. Again, it's just more so for comfortability for the client to get that circulation back after the cold. And then what we'll do, so again, I'll take some wipes and I'll just wipe off the excess gel, always lifting. Always in this lifting motion. So now we're going to start on the other side. Perfect. And I'll just have you extend your leg arms. Perfect. So what we're going to do, actually, we might have to reorient a little bit. We'll use the laptop. So I'll have her put her head on this side. Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, good.
1 second, we're just rotating.
Wow. It's good, actually. You can see the difference. Perfect. Can you guys hear me now? Yeah.
Sorry, thanks guys.
Great, awesome. And so what I was saying is that if you had a client who wanted their butt to be smaller, they're like, oh my, I don't want as much of an apple bottom. They want more of this lifted appearance here without so much of the apple bottom here. You could potentially just do the French technique the entire time. So I would recommend, again, just gauging it based on what the client is asking for, what aesthetic they're looking for as well. So if they really want sort of the Kim Kardashian apple bottom, go for the American with the French as well. And you can kind of divide it up depending on how you want to do that. So I got a question about gloves. So the reason why we recommend against gloves, and I would say particularly for the toning, is that for the toning especially, it's so contingent on getting that vasoconstriction effect. So that's going to be coming from the alternation of constriction and dilation. The wand is cooling to constrict. Your hand with your body heat follows to dilate. And so if you're wearing a glove, it's actually going to create a barrier between your body heat and their skin, which is going to sort of mitigate the results of the vasoconstriction, which is basically how scientifically these sessions are working. And so I would recommend against it. Of course, if a client asks you, we of course are totally fine with you using gloves. I would just say just have them on hand, but don't volunteer them up unless a client asks. So on this technique, exactly. So for this technique, we're not focusing on a specific temperature drop. We've confirmed with France on this that for the toning and the facial, it's less so about a specific temperature because we're not actually trying to get any cells to go through apoptosis. Instead, it's about proper technique. So really, again, making sure you're always following with the hand, making sure you're always doing that double tap. And it's more so the cold with the vasoconstriction that's producing results there. And also because this technique, we are lifting the wand up at every stroke, it would be very difficult to keep it at a specific temperature because the room temperature is always going to be very different. It's going to depend on also the client's body temperature, so a little harder to regulate there.
Questions about following with a firming cream or other slimming creams was also a question that came up before.
It would depend on the ingredients. There's no contraindication, so if you guys did want to add that, that's totally fine. I would just make sure that their skin is not too irritated, so you do really want to make sure that you're using enough gel in that case, just to make sure that their skin is not going to be too irritated by something like that.
Okay, question about the temperature in this technique. Are you focusing on a certain temperature? And also, how does that compare to the slimming butt lift temperature?
So for the slimming, any slimming session you ever do, you have to be under 4 degrees positive Celsius on the cold portion. Whereas for the toning, less concerned about temperature, it's more so all technique. So there's no real ideal temperature range for the toning as long as we're doing the technique properly. We're doing the double bounce for that intercellular communication. We're always following with our hand. We're going to be good to go on that. So the reason for the double tap, for those of you guys that didn't hear, is because it helps to promote intercellular communication. It also helps with promoting elasticity of the skin. So it basically just helps to kind of jumpstart, kickstart the treatment, produces that kind of localized effect to send blood to that area. And then I have a question about Normatec. So for Normatec, actually, for toning, there's no need for, Normatec is fine to combine with toning because there's actually no lymphatic interaction in toning. For slimming though, if you do have Normatec at your studio and you want to combine it with a slimming session, ideal time to do that would be 72 hours after a slimming session because that's when apoptosis is really ramped up in their system. So that's when they really have the most need for a detox. And Normatec is really great to incorporate that. So I have a question about fibrous cellulite. And just a question to follow up on that question. Is the fibrous cellulite in a fatty area? And is there fat under the thigh that she's dealing with as well? Yeah, so I would say in any case where you have really tough, heavy cellulite, alternate slimming and toning is going to be the best for those areas. So I would try doing a slimming session on her first, and then the following week toning. And what session are you guys on? Yeah, so for sure. So if she does have fatty areas underneath it, we do recommend starting with slimming. Reason being is that toning alone in those areas won't be as effective. It could just be because she has heavier cellulite. She might need more than the 5. She might need, again, a 10-pack. 5 slimming, 5 toning is generally what we recommend as a standard for people with heavy cellulite in those cases.
Nicholas, on the share drives that we offer, there's a whole folder of before and afters. Specifically, we'll look and see if we've got any good ones that we can add of the Brazilian butt lift. One note on advertising, Facebook isn't crazy as an understatement about before and afters. So, you know, you can run it on your organic pages, et cetera, but boosting, usually it's going to get rejected. Question, would this service aggravate any heat bumps, rash that a client may have in the butt area or inner thigh, perhaps?
No, it shouldn't do, actually. And if anything, it should actually help to calm some of that inflammation, soothe the redness. Of course, if there's any sort of open wounds or anything that is irritated to the point of broken skin, you do want to avoid that area. That's always my rule of thumb is if you're ever concerned that you might get body fluid on the wand, please abstain from that for the time being. All right, so we're going to switch now to the contouring motion. So again, the American version. So I'm going to just add some more gel to her now. Really focusing on this contour area.
So there's a question if we'd advertise this separately or offer it with a 10-pack. I mean, generally we would offer it with a 10-pack. It could be included, but it's a great thing to go ahead and post about on your organic, you know, because sometimes people don't think about this area, and, you know, it's a great piece to use in email communications to your clients and organic, et cetera, to talk about both options. Simon's posting in the chat our before and after folder, so you have it there for the direct link. Question here about loose skin in the stomach area and how well that works.
Yeah, so we've seen actually really, really good results on the toning sessions for that. Actually, Kara, who may or may not still be on this, had an amazing before and after of a 5-pack that she had done with a client for toning. So we can get that out as well.
What is the draining device I keep hearing about? Is this something you're hearing about from us, Ashley? I think she's saying here she read about it a few times on the fact sheet for CRYOSKIN.
Oh, Simon's coming with an answer, I think. Yeah, so we've only been working on the American apple bottom for about 3 minutes, and you can already start to see the change in the effect versus before when we were just doing the French. So really, really would definitely recommend this for anyone who's looking to enhance the shape and also the lift of the butt. So if they're just looking to kind of lift and flatten the butt, again, the French technique exclusively can be used, and that's fine. But I would say the majority of your clients are going to want that sort of Kim Kardashian effect, in which case the combination of the two is going to be way more effective.
Delaney, how long have you been waiting to drop Kim Kardashian in this webinar?
So long. Honestly, I've been waiting my life to drop Kim Kardashian in a webinar, so I'm very pleased. And then I have a question from Brittany about the double tap. Totally fine. Happy to repeat it. It's good to know because clients will ask you, why are you double tapping me? It helps to promote intercellular communication. Also helps to just promote elasticity in the skin. So really, really good for a session like this that is happening on more of a microcirculation level. It just helps it to happen a bit faster. Yep, so in terms of loose skin, like I said before, about the loose skin, toning is going to be the most appropriate for loose skin. We do have some great before and afters of that, so we can always, I think they should be in the before and after folder already. But yeah, anytime that you're dealing with loose skin as opposed to subcutaneous fat, the toning is going to be the best for it because it's going to help to produce that collagen and elastin as opposed to taking away fat that's not really there.
So a lot of people have this question, especially with the target of moms, speaking for myself here. So there's a lot of times two issues. One is that there's, more fat that can be addressed in a slimming session, but there's also looser skin. So the combination there of the slimming and the toning is very critical. And that's where in the kind of before and afters that we're doing that are out of our Miami location that Jess is working on, you are seeing incredible results with those moms in those areas because you've got both of those problems and both are being addressed. Simon is offering, if anybody gets Kim Kardashian to post about CRYOSKIN, he'll give you a one for free. Question, is that a free session, Simon, or a free machine? Or a free Kardashian? Oh, can it be Serena Williams too? Absolutely.
100%.
Jerome. Preferable, actually.
Free CRYOSKIN, Simon says, machine.
Free machine. Going once, going twice to Serena or Kim Kardashian getting a session. The challenge is out. He went to 5.0, Simon. In all seriousness, we should think about ways, if you guys are getting celebrity, endorsements, something there to gamify that. That's a great idea that is popping around. We're not going to give out one for free for every celebrity, but it will definitely get you mentioned in the weekly newsletter. And you'll definitely get a lot of results from it. So it's definitely good to try.
Right, perfect. And so we're done on this. Wipe again, lifting motion. Wow, you really can see the difference. Wow. So yeah, again, after any toning, the results are going to be fairly subtle. So, you know, of course, if they're dealing with any heavy cellulite, it's not going to disappear right away. Smooth this all around. Yeah, you're all set.
Great. Are there any final questions? Thanks everybody who joined today and stayed the extra amount of time. Oh goodness, this whole celebrity piece is really going quite crazy. We'll have to clarify that in the weekly email that comes out tomorrow. I think we're just sticking to Kim and maybe Serena, no sisters. All right. Any other questions that we can answer? Otherwise, we will be sending this out, both the link. All the previous webinars, as we've discussed, are in the previous webinar folder. And additions, we will be adding the chats. So that will be available in a document in those webinar folders, so you guys can go back and reference all the lovely conversation and banter that we've had, as well as the questions that have been answered in the chat. So thanks everybody again, and have a wonderful rest of your week.